This feeling of being 15 again, sneaking out to some dubious party. Only this time, I'm not sneaking out, I'm sneaking away. This is my story. One more glass won't hurt, I mutter, the lie already tasting stale in my mouth. My second refill of Chardonnay sloshes against the rim, echoing the thumping bass outside. Mike will be home late. Another work dinner. Another wave of excuses I barely hear anymore. It used to sting, that feeling of being sidelined. Now, it's mostly just empty. A buzz breaks my self-pity spiral. It's Emily, of course. Party at Kate's. You coming? The text is a lifeline, promising an alternative to the silent stretch of hours ahead. My finger hovers over the keyboard. A simple lie, a change of plans. Girls' night. My fingers type, a rush of guilt mingling with an unexpected tingle of excitement. The house pulses with unfamiliar energy as soon as the cab drops me off. A stranger's living room, crammed with bodies, all younger, louder, carefree in a way that tugs at some long dormant part of me. I should feel out of place, but the anonymity is oddly comforting. A face breaks free from the crowd. A guy with warm brown eyes and a smile that hits me like a splash of cold water, shocking me awake. Isn't that something? After 10 years of comfortable routine, it takes a stranger with a disarming grin to make my pulse quicken. Tom. He introduces himself, his voice a low rumble that vibrates somewhere pleasantly in my chest. Each casual question Emily directs at him becomes an excuse to steal glances, to study the warmth of his laugh. It's not just the wine loosening my tongue. It's a heady mix of nostalgia and something more dangerous. Possibility. This isn't some grand betrayal. That would require Mike to still be a real presence in my life, not just a name I scribble on bills. Yet, as the night stretches on, it feels increasingly a euro wrong, like a taste test of a freedom I'm not fully entitled to anymore. And strangely, that only makes it more intoxicating. My ears still burn where his breath ghosted against them a moment ago. Just one drink. Tom's voice cuts through the thump of the music, the lights swirling behind him like some strange halo. My traitorous heart gives a little leap. This whole night feels like a fever dream. Yet the smile tugging at my lips is entirely too real. He seems to sense my hesitation, his grin softening. Hey, no pressure. We can just talk, right? My inner voice cackles with bitter amusement, as if any of this has been about mere conversation. A ding breaks the tension. Mike, checking in. The words, how's your night? Throwing kisses, flash across the screen, and the guilt I'd been keeping at bay slams back, a physical ache in my chest. This isn't the freedom I craved. It's some cheap imitation. I type back a quick, all good. Having fun 2 hearts, and shove my phone away. The rest of the group spills onto the patio, a tide of bodies that briefly separate Tom and me. It should be a relief, a chance to reset my whirring brain. Instead, I find myself scanning the dispersing crowd for him. Ridiculous jolt of disappointment, twisting into something more. Anticipation? There he is, leaning against the railing, alone. I catch my breath. Was that intentional? The lure of the open patio suddenly feels unavoidable, the cool night air promising respite from the suffocating heat of my own skin. He greets me with a raised eyebrow, and my earlier doubts seem to melt away. He isn't pushy. There's an ease to him that melts a sliver of my resolve. We talk, and damningly, I find myself laughing. Really laughing. Not the polite half-smiles I dish out at work functions. You shouldn't be out here alone with a guy like me, he murmurs when a particularly raucous burst of laughter drifts over from the group on the lawn. There's that teasing edge again, daring me to respond. A guy like you? My voice comes out breathless, caught on the tightrope walk between playful and reckless. He takes a step closer. He's close enough to touch, and I know the smart thing, the sane thing, is to walk away, to go find Emily in the crowd. But his eyes, still flickering with amusement, hold a question. And deep down, a treacherous part of me yearns for the answer. My hand trembles as I fumble for the cab door handle. Rain splatters the window, distorting the streetlights into blurry streaks of color. It matches my own vision, smudged and distorted by the night's events. Each jolt of the car sends a surge of nausea through me. a grotesque echo of the heady rush from mere hours earlier. You okay, miss? The driver's voice cuts through my haze, and I mumble a vague, fine, thanks, hoping he'll drop it. I don't have the strength to fake normalcy. My fingers find the familiar weight on my left hand. The cool band of gold, a chilling accusation, an absurd urge to rip it off wars with a pathetic flicker of defiance. He doesn't deserve my guilt. He barely deserved my presence these past few years. I can't even count anymore. Tom's apartment flashes into my mind, sleek, stylish, and utterly impersonal, a sterile backdrop to the whirlwind of the last hours. Did it really happen? The rumpled sheets, the faint smell of his cologne still clinging to my skin. It's proof I can't erase, no matter how hard I scrub my brain to try and undo it. Just a few more blocks. I whisper to myself, and the words shatter in the silence. There's no comfort in returning home, just a different kind of trap. I picture Mike asleep, the curve of his back towards me, the silent testament to the chasm between us. A sob catches in my throat, and I desperately choke it back. Tears won't absolve me. What I did, it wasn't a hazy mistake. There was intent, an ugly, desperate need to claw back a sliver of the person I used to be. This twisted triumph feels like the most profound defeat of all. Each furtive movement in the darkness of the cab feels like a crime scene I'm scrubbing clean. My clothes are evidence I can discard, but the heat of Tom's touch still burns against my skin, an invisible brand of shame. The rain falls heavier now, mirroring the cold despair coiling tight within me. Just a few more blocks, and I can attempt the impossible, pretend none of this ever happened. The front door clicks shut behind me like the final snap of a judge's gavel. Home. The word is a mockery. Each familiar object, the vase of fading lilies I never get around to throwing out, the framed photo of us on the mantel, the slight dent in the sofa where Mike always sits, feels like a piece of evidence I've overlooked during a panicked crime scene cleanup. My clothes hit the floor in a discarded heap, but I can't work up the energy for a shower. The hot water won't erase the faint phantom trace of Tom's hands on my skin. The way his name sits just under the surface of my thoughts, a constant, taunting echo. My reflection in the bathroom mirror is a stranger. Eyes wide and bloodshot, the faint smudge of mascara under them like a bruise. Do I look the part of a woman who spent the night in another man's bed? I turn away, unable to bear witness to my own guilt. Sleep, when it finally comes, is cruel. Not the oblivion I desperately crave, but a series of flickering, disjointed scenes. I'm running, but the pavement melts away, replaced with the tangle of Tom's sheets. I try to scream, but Mike's voice calls my name. The concern in his tone a lash against my skin. The alarm shrills me awake, and there's Mike, standing over me, a puzzled frown creasing his brow. Bad dream? His words are a lifeline, a chance to cling to normalcy. Just stressed, I lie, forcing a smile. It feels brittle enough to shatter. He leans down for a perfunctory kiss, the brush of his lips against mine sending a jolt of revulsion through me. The rest of the day unfolds in excruciating slow motion. Every cup of coffee Mike refills, every casual question he throws my way feels like walking barefoot across broken glass. My skin prickles with anticipation, my phone a vibrating poison in my pocket. Has he sent a message? A casual check-in? A question designed to trip me up? Each time the screen remains blank, it brings a dizzying mix of relief and disappointment. Night falls again, and this time, it's terror, not exhaustion, that drives me into bed. I lie still beside Mike, staring up at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster, marking time until the inevitable dawn. This, I realize, is my punishment. Not some grand exposure, but the relentless torture of living with myself, with the knowledge of what I've become. My phone buzzes in my pocket, and my heart does a sickening flip-flop. It's bound to be Emily. How was the rest of your night? She'll ask, a seemingly innocent question laced with the knowing tone she has when I try to hide something. She's my oldest friend, a relentless decoder of my moods. There's nowhere to escape her scrutiny. Days bleed into a blur of hyper-awareness. Every creak in the old house, a footstep outside the office, the rustle of the mail hitting the floor, each innocent sound morphs into a potential threat. Did Tom brag to someone? Was there a camera at that party? Did a stray earring find its way onto the floor of his sterile apartment? A tiny, glittering piece of incriminating evidence? Sleep, when it finally comes, is no respite. My dreams are a disorienting mix of the mundane and the terrifying. I'm back at the supermarket, pushing a cart, but everyone has Tom's face, their identical smirks mocking my spiraling panic. I wake with a gasp, bathed in sweat, certain they're coming for me. Emily's texts become more frequent, more insistent. I ignore them at first, but the guilt of ignoring my best friend wars with the terror of crafting another excuse. Finally, in a moment of weakness, I concoct a story, a migraine, exhaustion, anything but the truth. She buys it, for now, but I can practically hear her skepticism seeping through the screen. My paranoia spills over into work. Every corner I turn might hold Tom, a silent accusation in his eyes. Surely he wouldn't come here, would he? But what do I really know about this man? This ghost who has invaded my life. Then it happens. A casual coffee run turns into a nightmare. There he is, at the counter, the same easy smile, in conversation with Mike. I freeze, a half-formed latte in my hand, watching in horror as their conversation unfolds with unbearable normalcy. Tom sees me, nods in acknowledgement. Is there a flicker of something predatory behind his eyes? Or is my terror inventing it? He introduces himself to Mike, all politeness. They shake hands. Mike seems utterly oblivious, and I fight the overwhelming temptation to run, to scream the truth, to shatter their easy banter. Back in my cubicle, I try to regain my composure. Am I being toyed with? The tension coiling in my chest is all-consuming. In the days that follow, I start to see the cracks in the facade of our normal marriage. A curt comment from Mike about dinner, a glance of irritation. It feels like the first tremors before the earthquake. He doesn't know, not yet, but my guilt is infecting everything, twisting the most innocent interaction into proof that our house of cards is about to come tumbling down. We need to talk. Emily's voice crackles over the phone. It's not the playful tone I'm used to, but a sharp demand that sends a shiver down my spine. We're meeting for lunch, something we haven't done in weeks. Each minute ticking by feels laden with inevitable doom. The coffee shop is a blur. I see Emily seated by the window, her usually vibrant energy tightly wound. My confession spills out before the waiter has even taken our order. The words, shameful and desperate, hang heavy in the air between us. Emily is, as expected, a hurricane of reactions. Shock, a flash of disgust, and then, I see it, the morbid flicker of excited curiosity. I can't believe this. She hisses, yet her eyes rake over me. She wants details, every sordid piece of information I've kept hidden, and some twisted part of me yearns to offer them up, to share this monstrous burden. When she finally sags back in her chair, I feel a flicker of something that's almost pity. So what now? She asks. The loyalty I'd clung to all these years has warped. I can no longer tell if she's friend or foe. Tom's name hangs unanswered between us. I know confrontation with him is inevitable. I could try the pleading route, offer money, whatever it takes to shut him up, but something instinctual tells me it won't be that easy. What does he want? Is this some petty act of revenge, a desire for cash? Or does his game run deeper? The coffee arrives, untouched, and we both stare at the swirling steam as if it holds answers. I return home to an almost eerily normal evening. Mike cooks, asks the usual questions about my day. Beneath our mundane conversation, a new terror bubbles. Every shared glance feels accusatory, every innocent action loaded with the potential for discovery. Did he notice the tremble in my hand as I handed him the wine glass? Does he see me the way Emily does now? Tainted? Broken? My phone buzzes late that night. A single text from an unknown number. Thought you could get away with it? I nearly lose my grip on the device. The threats were vague before, but this new one slices through any remaining illusion of safety. I want to scream, hurl the phone at the wall, but instead, I freeze, the silence in the room ringing in my ears. And then it hits me. The threats didn't start until after I confided in Emily. My fingers tighten around the phone as a horrifying realization takes root. Could she be the one tormenting me? Is this some twisted sense of payback, jealousy, or maybe, is it even something deeper and more dangerous? The tangled web I've woven for myself has just ensnared me further. There's nowhere to hide. Emily starts appearing with unsettling frequency. Coffee dates masked as concern. Offers to just come by and chat, laced with a predatory gleam in her eyes. She wants the messy details, and despite my growing fear, there's a strange validation in it, proof I'm not just imagining her change in demeanor. A new plan takes shape, a gamble based on desperation. I'll tell Emily about the texts, about the escalating sense of being hunted. It's either a catastrophically stupid move or a stroke of twisted genius. If she's the culprit, she'll slip up, reveal herself. If not, maybe she'll be scared enough to actually help, for once. They're not going to stop, I whisper, feigning terror as we huddle in the back corner of that same coffee shop. Emily's eyes widen, a macabre mix of shock and delight. She presses me for specifics, relishing every agonizing detail. Tom, as if summoned by our conversation, re-enters my life in dramatic fashion. He calls, insistent. We need to meet, finish this. His tone is measured, but there's an undercurrent, the barely veiled threat of someone holding all the cards. I'm trapped in a terrifying game of cat and mouse, but I refuse to play the cowering victim. A surge of desperation-fueled anger fuels me. Each sleepless night, as the anonymous threats continue, my resolve hardens. I'm done being a pawn. The internet becomes my weapon of choice. I scour social media, news sites, anything that might unearth information about Tom. Who is this stranger who holds my life in his hands? Late into the night, fueled by coffee and a reckless drive to survive, I dig deeper. And then, hidden amidst the detritus of Mike's home office, the discovery hits me like a physical blow. A photo, haphazardly tucked into a file marked with a client's name. Tom, smiling, beside a woman with vaguely familiar eyes and an achingly radiant smile. And it's not me. Confrontation is inevitable. Mike arrives home to my cold fury, the photo a damning piece of evidence I slam onto the table between us. Initially, it's confusion. A blank denial that he even knows Tom. Then, with chilling speed, his expression morphs into anger, the blame twisting back on me, questioning my sanity and my judgment. The fragile facade of our marriage disintegrates in a shouting match, accusations echoing against the walls. We were already broken. This just shatters the remaining pieces beyond repair. As he storms out, I sink to the floor, realizing with chilling clarity the game has only just begun. My whole body aches with exhaustion, a ceaseless hum fueled by adrenaline and the bitter dregs of too much coffee. Sleeping pills lie untouched. Rest is a cruel joke when every closing of my eyes conjures the chilling texts and the lingering image of that photo. Just when my resolve begins to fray, Emily reappears on the scene. Her voice on the phone is almost saccharine sweet, a veneer of sympathy thinly masking that familiar predatory edge. Maybe I can help, she offers, the words dripping with false sincerity. Desperation is a dangerous motivator. Against my better judgment, I listen. Her plan is a twisted gamble. Lure Tom out, force a confrontation. She knows a place, an abandoned warehouse district, just the right mix of isolation and theatrics. I picture him arriving, expecting me, vulnerable and contrite, and finding the tables flipped. Yet, a nagging unease coils in my stomach. Isn't there something too eager in Emily's offer, too much relish in her detailed descriptions of how this ambush will play out? Despite my desperation, a new question starts to form. What if I've stumbled into an even more insidious trap? The warehouse looms at dusk, the rusted metal and shattered windows a grim backdrop for my potential downfall. I pace within the cavernous space, each echoing footstep fueling my paranoia. It should be Tom walking through those broken doors. This was Emily's plan, designed to corner him and wrest the truth from him. A figure finally emerges from the shadows. My heart pounds, the relief of it being Tom morphing instantly into a sickening wave of dread. Because it's not him, it's Mike, and he is not alone. Emily is there, watching me from the shadows, her triumphant smirk tearing through the last tattered remnants of our friendship. Her betrayal cuts far deeper than any infidelity I committed. The story unfolds in a sickening torrent of accusations. Emily, with sickening relish, paints me as the architect of my own demise. Tom, it turns out, is her old flame, bitter and willing to be a tool in her vindictive game. Mike's expression is chilling in its cold fury. He is no longer the hapless husband I once knew, but a stranger fueled by his own twisted need for retribution. And I am the perfect fool, laid bare and vulnerable. Tom's hold over me, the escalating threats, they were orchestrated by the one person I thought was my lifeline. It's not shame I feel anymore, not guilt, but a white-hot rage at being so thoroughly played. Emily steps from the shadows. I always knew you'd screw up eventually, Sarah. Some people just aren't meant for happiness. A wicked smile twisting her lips as my world collapses around me. A primal scream tears itself from my throat. It ricochets off the warehouse walls, a ragged echo of my shattered soul. Emily is the first target of my fury, my nails clawing uselessly against the iron grip Mike has on my arm. I kick out wildly, a desperate animal caught in a steel trap. "Let me go," I shriek. My voice breaks, hoarse and guttural. "You did this. You set me up." Emily merely laughs, the sound a grating echo in the cavernous space. All pretense of concern is gone, replaced by a satisfied predator watching its prey struggle. Tom, ever the opportunist, allows the chaos to unfold. He stands slightly removed, an amused smile on his face as his gaze flickers between Mike's rage-contorted features and my tear-streaked desperation. "You were always so easy, Sarah," Emily purrs. She circles me, each word like a poison dart. "So self-absorbed, so blind to anything besides your own pathetic unhappiness. Did Mike ever tell you how I suggested that party? Conveniently forgot to mention his work thing." A chilling realization claws through the haze of my anger. The photo, it wasn't just some other woman. That was Emily, years younger, the triumphant gleam in her eyes disturbingly familiar. My mind races, fragments of conversation falling into a sickening new pattern. Tom wasn't a random fling. He and Mike knew each other. The affair was never the point. It was a tool, a cruel setup designed to make me vulnerable. Mike and Tom finally break apart, locked in a tense standoff. Yet, it's Tom who seems to regain his composure first, a cruel smirk replacing his earlier cockiness. Always so short-sighted. "Mike," he taunts, reaching into his pocket. He produces a USB drive, dangling it like some perverse trophy. "This, my friend, is why our little partnership had to end." Hope flickers dangerously in my chest. The game isn't over. Mike's reaction is instant. He lunges for the device, his controlled fury replaced by desperation. "You don't get to play victim here too, Mike," I spit out. He freezes, his eyes widening in shock. "It's a gamble, a shot in the dark, but I need to know. All those late nights, those deals, they were with her, weren't they? Emily, your secret business partner, the puppet master." The silence stretches, broken only by the ragged sound of our breathing. Then, Mike nods slowly, his confession a silent punch to the gut. He turns to Emily, a chilling new hatred gleaming in his eyes. I see pieces quick into place, years of whispered deals, hidden ambition, in my own oblivion to the game being played right under my nose. And now, Tom's oily voice cuts through the tension. "Thanks to our little charade, I get to expose you both. Financial improprieties, blackmail, such a delicious scandal. It'll be the end of your pristine reputation, Mike." My legs give out. I sink to the dusty floor, the weight of the full betrayal washing over me. The fight has left me, replaced by a bone-deep weariness. We were all pawns, mere figures on their twisted chessboard. Our downfall was orchestrated, every move carefully planned, and I was their perfect fool. My world shrinks down to the four walls of our house. It's no longer a sanctuary, but a gilded cage. Mike isn't quite my jailer, but neither is he my husband anymore. An uneasy truce settles between us, shattered only by the thud of a newspaper on the table each morning, the headlines screaming of investigation and scandal. A morbid countdown to Mike's public demise. Tom hovers like a persistent vulture, His visits are a mix of threats and twisted offers. Destroy the flash drive, and a sliver of normalcy might be restored. Or, hand it over and watch Mike's world burn to the ground. Each appearance sends me spiraling further into despair. It's no longer about saving my marriage. It's about sheer survival. Sleep evades me with cruel intent. My dreams are a disorienting mix of Emily's taunting laughter, the cold touch of a cell bar against my skin. Was it my fate, or Mike's? The lines blur, guilt and fear knotting together. A noose around my sanity. The breaking point comes as Tom, emboldened with each of Mike's increasing setbacks, lays his cards on the table. He's going down, Sarah. The question is, are you going with him? His hand brushes against mine, a chilling reminder of the night that started it all. Revulsion surges through me, stronger than the fear. You want the flash drive? My voice rings out, a brittle note of defiance cutting through the heavy silence. His eyes narrow, interest sharpening his features. It's a desperate gambit, but desperation is all I have left. Later that night, as Mike crashes into a whiskey-induced slumber, I creep into his study. The flash drive is there, a tiny silver rectangle gleaming with obscene promise. My hand trembles violently as I slip it into my pocket. The files are as damning as Tom promised. A labyrinth of financial deceit that stretches back years, long before I disrupted their carefully crafted world. When Tom returns the next day, it's not with a threat, but an offer of a chilling alliance. I'm not with Mike and Emily, he purrs. I've been investigating their shady operation for months. You didn't ruin anything, Sarah. You were bait. The realization turns the key in the lock of my anger. This was never about infidelity, it was always about money, and I was the perfect, unsuspecting scapegoat. Confronting Mike is an act of raw self-preservation. I slam the flash drive onto the kitchen table, spilling the ugliness between us like so much poison. Lies crumble into desperation, his carefully constructed facade collapsing under the weight of his crimes. It all ends in a flurry of sirens and police lights. I stand on the porch, hands shaking, as they lead Mike away. The world spins, nausea roiling in my gut. This isn't the freedom I craved, but a brutal end to a story built on deception from its very foundation. I am tired of an old hag. Please leave me. My husband, who had proudly attempted the act of the entrance of our home, said so in an uninterested manner. And the woman he was with also grinned and made a cheap apology, saying, "I'm sorry I took your man." She didn't seem sorry at all. It's been a little over a year since we got married, and I feel ashamed of myself for having loved such a scumbag. But at the same time, I'm grateful for the opportunity saving me from the trouble of taking revenge. I've decided to go home to my parents with a big smile on my face, as I look forward to seeing my husband's expression when he finds out the truth. My name is Alice. My father is the president of a big company, and my mother is a famous violinist. I was proud of my parents, as they have always been in love, even though they are both getting older. The time had finally come for me to become a bride. I met my husband when we joined the same club in college, and discovered we had the same interests. His name was Ryan, and he was the son of the president of a company too. However, I did not tell him that I was the daughter of a company president. Many men would approach me for my house or money, and I felt like they didn't see me for who I really was, and it made me feel vain. So I treated Ryan as a normal friend. However, he asked me for a serious relationship, and we started dating in the summer of our sophomore year of college. When we both graduated and started working, we decided to get married. However, we only enjoyed a year and a few months of newlywed life before I became pregnant. Because we had been friends for long before our relationship, we did not have the same initial feeling as when we first started dating. Still, I think we respected each other as a couple and kept a good distance. Of course, we also made love, and because we were both young and healthy, I became pregnant a few months after we started trying to conceive. My husband was very happy about it, but the problem was that from this point on, my morning sickness was very bad. I started sleeping a lot at home, and my conversations with my husband decreased dramatically. It was more like I couldn't talk to him because I was too ill. I was nauseous 24 hours a day, and the only thing that kept me going was jelly pouches. However, my doctor told me that during this period, as long as I drank water, even if I didn't eat, I would be fine. I stayed patient until the stable period arrived, and the morning sickness settled down. Finally, around the time I was 20 weeks pregnant, it began to subside. Up until this point, I had been taking time off from work because of the sickness. Since I joined my father's company, he was able to take action for my pregnancy from all in all. But I still felt like I was placing a heavy burden on everyone around me, so I got back to work and took over and did my job. Of course, I did it in a way that did not affect the baby. After returning to work, I was working from morning to night every day. I hadn't noticed it due to my busy schedule, but I felt a little different and uncomfortable in my relationship with my husband. Even after my sickness settled down, my husband was somewhat quiet and didn't talk to me much. Even when I tried to talk to him, he would only respond with a simple "oh" or "I see." My husband has been very busy recently and has been tense because he is preparing to take over the company. I thought that was the reason he was so quiet, but it seems I was wrong. One day, when I went to take out the trash, a woman who lived on the same floor in the same apartment building suddenly came up to me. I had only greeted her before, so I was a little wary of her. She looked around and was checking something. Then, she put her hand to my mouth and quietly whispered something like this to me. She said that several times a week during the daytime on weekdays, my husband would let a woman into his room and she should come out about an hour later. The woman gave me a description of the woman and asked if she was either one's younger sister. Neither my husband nor I have a younger sister. My husband has a sister, but she is over 30. She is married with children, and she is not here because she went with her husband to live in a rural area. She described the woman to be a young woman in her 20s, and that was why she was curious. Since I'm not that insensitive, I thought that my husband was probably having an affair. Recently, my husband has been acting strangely indifferent to me, and he even has been indifferent to our baby. The more I did, the more suspicious I find. At any rate, I just thanked the woman who told me, and took out the garbage and went back to my room. That evening, I was inclined to question my husband as soon as he came home. However, he was in a very bad mood, as if something had happened at work. He threw his bag roughly and took off his clothes, then went to take a shower without saying a word. After a while, he came out and said, "I won't need dinner today. I don't have an appetite," and started to head back to his room. I had already prepared a meal for two at the table, and I was suspicious that my husband was cheating on me. So this attitude made me irritated. There's no need to talk like that. If you don't need dinner, you could have told me earlier. And don't leave your clothes and bag around. I have been concerned about my husband's sloppiness for a while now. I usually don't say it to him, but today I felt like I had to say something about it. So I said something like that to my husband. "Huh. Shut up, you old hag." He spat out these words and went back to his room. I was shocked that he called me an old hag when I was still in my mid-20s. I was so annoyed with my husband's attitude that my frustration reached its peak. I ate the whole meal for two, took a bath, and watched a movie in the living room by myself since tomorrow was my day off from work. I fell asleep before I knew it, and when I peeked into my husband's room in the morning, he was gone. I checked the front door and found no shoes. I thought he had gone out for a walk or something, but he never came home again. Yesterday the attitude, leaving his pregnant wife without saying anything, cheating, and not coming home. I am at my limit. I immediately went online and listed several companies that specialize in investigating affairs. Then I consulted with a private detective who had a high rating and asked him to gather solid evidence for me, as I was willing to pay him any amount of money for his services. Then, a few days after I got into a cold war with my husband, I had been suffering from an upset stomach since the morning and couldn't concentrate on work. Then my boss, who was worried about me, suggested that I go see an obstetrician just to be sure. I left work early and went to the hospital, where I was told that I was having an impending premature labor. She didn't know the cause, but said it would do me no harm to rest. I thought that I must have put my baby in danger because of the stress I had been under the past few days. I burst into tears from frustration. Then I managed to get home and turn the key. With the sign, I opened the door and was stunned by the sight in front of me. There at the front door was my husband and a young woman I didn't know, embracing each other. I guess they were not expecting me to come home, so they just stared at each other with their widened eyes. Then my husband, who had regained his composure first, yelled at me, "Why are you home already?" My husband glares at me as he hurriedly fixes the sagging of his clothes and wipes the woman's lipstick from his lips. The woman is strangely calm, even though she saw me too, and smiles at me in a mocking way. What the woman on the same floor told me was true. Hey Ryan, you're supposed to be working right now, right? I see you've skipped work to play with that girl at home with no hesitation. I gave them a look of disdain, but they didn't seem to hear me at all. On the contrary, my husband, who had become defiant, muttered this, as if for a matter of course. I'm tired of an old hag. You're pregnant, and I don't want to have to put up with you all the time. Please leave me. At that time, I felt a tremendous shock run through my body. I was carrying a child with my husband in my belly and desperately trying to raise it. How could he complain because his needs were not being met? Then the affair partner heard this and laughed hysterically, and with tears in her eyes, she said, "That's hilarious. Well, we are all old hags when we finish college, right? I'm so sorry I stole your husband, the next president of the company." From this statement, it was determined that she was in college or younger. I knew this to some extent because I had done some research, but I naturally burst out laughing from their statements. "Oh, are you sure? Are you really going to break up with me? I'm going to charge your aunt money. Will you pay it?" When I said that, my husband looked a bit jittery for a moment, but then he immediately snickered. I guess common women are really greedy for money, aren't they? It hurts to watch. "Well, okay. I will pay your price," he said. The affair partner knew he was married and still was having an affair with him, so I said I would charge her as well. "I will pay your share too." He is showing a casual, mature attitude, and the woman is delirious at the sight of it. What in the world am I being shown? Anyway, it happened at the time when I was about to start talking about divorce and alimony, so I guess I was lucky. Witnessing the two of them in action was a huge miscalculation, but it was a good thing. I saved myself some trouble. Later that day, I packed my bags and headed back to my parents' house. The next day, sure enough, I got a call from my husband crying, "Wait a minute. You're the daughter of the president of Smith's? That big pharma company? I never heard anything about that." It seems that my husband finally realized that I was the daughter of the president of a well-known pharmaceutical company around here. Or rather, it was inevitable that this would happen. Yesterday, I came home and told my parents, who were very surprised to see me. I told them that the two of them had been engaging in their daily activities in broad daylight, and that they had abused me and declared a divorce. I had hired a private detective, so everything was pretty smooth. My father, who had heard the story, was furious and immediately contacted my husband's father and said, "What kind of an education are you giving your son?" My daughter came home hurt. "No more talk on the project. I will never do business with your company again." Yes, our company and my husband's company actually have a business relationship, and our company is superior in position. My husband is in charge of outside sales and I'm basically in charge of accounting, so we didn't have to deal with each other. So I guess he didn't know. He had no idea that I was an employee of a business partner company and also the daughter of that company's president. Naturally, my husband's father or father-in-law received an angry phone call from my father. He immediately contacted my husband and called him over. There, my husband learned the whole truth and he panicked and called me. This is what has happened so far. The flow has changed in just one day after I announced the divorce, and my husband, who is freaking out, is now saying to me, "I admit that I was wrong, so please don't divorce me. If our company and Smith's Pharma cease doing business, our company will suffer a great deal of damage." He is desperately trying to restore our relationship, but I had already decided on my answer. "After neglecting your pregnant wife and leaving work to make out with another woman in the daytime, you were the one who forced me to leave, saying that you were tired of an old hag, right? If you're going to be the next president, at least take responsibility for your words." When I said this in an angry way, my husband fell silent. I'm wondering what he thought he could do to get me to forgive him. But even so, I know that if he backed down now, his company will be in serious trouble. It is inevitable that he will be pulled down from his position as successor. So at that time, he hung up the phone as if he had given up, but the next day, he was in front of my parents' house and apologized outside the door. He shouted, "I heard from my father. Smith was planning a big project with us. If we get divorced, it's totally off the table. Please reconsider." 1 minute, my husband was apologizing. The next, he is desperately begging for forgiveness with words of self-preservation. I was truly ashamed to think that there was a period of time when I loved such a person even a little. Although I ignored him for a while, my husband showed no signs of backing down. Then, my father, who was reading the newspaper, gulped down all the coffee he was drinking. He put the cup down roughly and went to the front door. And then, go home. I will never let a tramp like you see my daughter again. I will have you go through a lawyer from now on. If you don't leave now, I will call the police, he said with the face of a demon. My husband turned pale and left. But when I thought he had left, he returned soon after. This time, my father-in-law joined him. Mr. President, I'm very sorry for what my stupid son has done. I will make him pay for hurting your daughter. So please, just the project. Even after hearing this, my father's feeling did not seem to change, and he declared that he would never do business with them again. My father-in-law's complexion was getting worse and worse, and he looked as if he was going to collapse at any time. My husband is shaking as he realizes that he is putting not only his parents' lives, but also the lives of all the employees at risk. This was not going to end well, and I had something I wanted to tell my father-in-law. I made a decision to settle the matter here. I had been in my parents' house for a long time, and suddenly showed up, so my husband's face lights up as he approaches me. But when I shook off his hand and glared when he reached over to me, he was in loss of words, perhaps because he had never been so strongly rejected by me before. I gave him no time to catch his breath and said, "You are a married man, and she has a fiancé copyright who is working, and I heard her fiancé copyright works for a rival company of yours." My husband blinks rapidly as if he had an idea of what I was talking about. My father-in-law, who did not seem to grasp the situation, looked at my husband suspiciously. I told him everything I had obtained from the detective. This man is leaking confidential company information to her. Then, my husband turned the other way and fled. Nah, he couldn't do that. My father-in-law reacted immediately and grabbed my husband's hand to stop him. My husband's body was shaking in fear, and all he could do was smile awkwardly. Seeing my husband in such a pitiful state, I let out a sigh and continued. The woman with whom he was having an affair, she seems to have been lonely because her fiancé copyright had not been taking care of her recently. So she approached Ryan, the son of the president of the rival company, and tricked him into giving her confidential information. She passed it on to her fiancé copyright to get his attention. You know what? She was just using you. When I said this to my husband with a cold look in my eyes, he slowly opened his mouth and blurted out something like this. It wasn't a coincidence that I met her. So she was the one who set it all up. Oh no. We made a promise that we'll get married if I left you. My husband, finally realizing that he was in the worst possible situation, collapsed to his knees. The woman whom he had never doubted had been an enemy's spy. He loses his wife in the process. I couldn't find words to describe it better than a disaster. In the end, this man was only seen as a son of the president of the company, and he was only being used. It must be his damnation for abandoning his pregnant wife for his own foolish desire. After I finished speaking, I glanced at my father-in-law. Oh my God. You not only ruined our business with Smith's Pharmaceuticals, but you even leaked information to a rival company. Are you trying to destroy our company? He looked at his son with a regretful expression, as angry as he could be. My husband could not help himself by apologizing to me any further, and he realized that he had done something that could not be undone, and he just froze on the spot. For a while, the atmosphere was heavy and gloomy like a funeral. My father, who was watching what was happening behind me, said, "Go home now. I have no more use for you." With that, my husband and father-in-law left. After that, our company's business with my father-in-law's was immediately suspended. They could not talk back, and had to accept the cancellation of business. We were also forced to deal with the leak of confidential information. I could imagine the employees being overwhelmed by the situation. I heard that they were so exhausted that many of them resigned. In the end, the big project was scrapped too. My husband's company went bankrupt, including the damage caused by the leak of confidential information. At this time, a settlement regarding the divorce was reached, and I finally divorced Ryan and became a stranger. As I had declared, I demanded millions of dollars in alimony and child support for my ex-husband, including that of the affair partner. Then, he started saying that he would pay his own alimony and child support, but he would not pay her portion. So I thought it was a hassle, but I filed a claim for alimony to her. I was told that her fiancé copyright had found out about the affair because of the contents certified letter. Naturally, she was stumped by her fiancé copyright. Everything was settled after this proposal. Her fiancé copyright said that he would like me to do business with him and his company in exchange for him paying his girlfriend's portion of the alimony. Our interests were more aligned with their company, and more importantly, my ex-husband's company is bankrupt, so securing another business partner is a must. She is still a college student, has no part-time job, and probably wouldn't be able to pay what I charged, so I agreed on that. It was also her sole discretion to leak the information in the first place. Her ex-fiancé copyright never asked for any of that. It was none of our business. We were able to secure a new business partner, and the project we had originally planned was a great success as a result of working with that company, so I think that it ended well. My ex-husband was disowned by his parents and turned to his sister. I guess because her husband also runs a company, he was also disowned at the door. According to our mutual acquaintance, he is now holed up in a one-bedroom apartment, working from home while working as a guard at night to make a living. Perhaps because my ex-husband was the son of a company president, he had a high sense of pride. I don't know how humiliating it must be for him to live the way he does now, but he deserves it. As for me, I gave birth to a healthy boy safely after that. Even if he has the blood of that scumbag, there is no doubt that he is my child. So I raised him gently at times and strictly at others so that he would not be like that scumbag. Fortunately, my family is wealthy, and I myself am working, so we are not in financial trouble. We also welcome a